From the News Channel 5 Network, this is Inside Politics.
Hello, everyone. I'm News Channel 5's political analyst, Pat Nolan. Welcome to Inside Politics. It's quickly becoming the most heated matter on Tennessee's August ballot. I'm referring to the retention ouster election regarding 3 Supreme Court justices, Cornelia Cart, Sharon Lee, and Gary Wade. Today on Inside Politics, we're going to focus on that battle, talk to both sides. Later in the show, we'll talk with someone who wants to see those justices removed from office to get voters to vote no on that particular topic when it comes up on the August ballot. But first, we welcome Nashville attorney Lew Conner, who's among those leading the efforts to keep the justices, to get people to vote yes to keep them on the vote. Mr. Conner, thank you for coming on the show.
Oh, I'm delighted to be here, Pat.
Simply stated, give us the elevator speech. Why do these justices deserve another 8 years on the bench?
Because they're wonderful jurists. They are not political in any way. Under the system which we are operating, which is a nonpartisan merit selection process, both to become a justice and to be retained as a justice, they have passed every test with flowing colors. As an example, the Retention Commission, of which the Lieutenant Governor and the Speaker of the House appoint 7 of the 9 members, voted 26-1 that all 3 should be retained in the yes-no election.
But those who are opposing these justices staying on say that they're soft on crime and they're anti-business. Now, those are hot-button issues, particularly in a red Republican state as we are. How do you convince people those charges just don't hold any water?
Because, in fact, they are factually incorrect. As an example, crime, the death penalty, which you're exactly right, is a hot button issue. 18 of the 21 cases that have come before this court since they've been there with the death penalty have been sustained. And those that were sent back had to be sent back because of errors of law. And had they not been sent back by our Supreme Court, at least 2 of them would have been sent back by the Supreme Court of the United States.
So in your mind, this race is really about partisan politics from the other side and also about who's going to be the next Attorney General, since the court appoints that person?
It's absolutely fair in both respects. And the Lieutenant Governor, Ramsey, admits openly and notoriously that it is about partisan politics. Let's have a race. I and those who at least stood with me early on when we started to try to defend the justices who can't defend themselves very well.
I was going to ask you that. These judges are not speaking for themselves on this. Why not?
Because in accordance with the judicial ethics, they can't talk about their opinions. They cannot talk about what they might do with any future case. They can't even go out themselves and raise a plug nickel.
But there's been an ethical complaint filed and was dismissed by a pretty powerful, prominent state senator. He's having a hearing about that next week. He says that the judge, one of the justices, I think it was Justice Wade, should not have said what he did. It looked like he was endorsing some other justices. At least the timing of that was bad, don't you admit?
Oh, absolutely. The timing was bad, but I believe it to be a witch hunt. What the justice did was specifically comment on the work before him by one of the judges as to whom the Retention Commission had some question. And I believe that this ethical complaint is nothing but an attack on the separation of powers.
Now, these justices are not speaking out for themselves. You and others attorneys have been going across the state doing that and raising money for them. There are also charges these justices are out raising money. And that would create some problems for the judicial canons, would it not?
If they specifically themselves went out and asked people to give them money, as I understand it, that's a bar. But to have people like me or the lawyers throughout the state, and I want us to get to that, asking for money, is another question. I mean, this is a direct attack on the independence of the judiciary. The people who know these justices the best are the members of the bar. The Tennessee Bar Association took a poll of its membership, and in an unbelievable number, 93%, over 2,000 lawyers said they should be retained, and 93% of the lawyers, and you know, Pat, couldn't agree on whether the sun's going to come up in the east or go down in the west.
But is that credible? There are others on the other side who say, well, the lawyers have a conflict of interest. Of course they're going to tell the people that oversee their work that they're doing a good job.
No, they're not, because it's a secret ballot. And if in fact they think that it's bad, they would say it's bad. Nobody knows how any vote was cast.
The idea that lawyers are giving money to this raises questions. Do the lawyers have a conflict? Because again, they do practice before these justices, and here they're giving money to their campaigns.
Yes, that is, in theory, a conflict, but think of the alternative. A political race, Republicans versus Democrats, which we've never had in 42 years of the merit selection process, is going to cause that to happen every time there's an election. The plaintiffs' lawyers and the defense lawyers and other special interests are the only people who will care and who will be involved in these races.
You're part of a group, I believe, that's called Keep Tennessee Courts Fair. They said about a week or so ago they had raised $600,000 already. I think that's probably part of some of your efforts. That sounds like the kind of money that's going to wind up in being some television spots, maybe some direct mail, some other things. What kind of campaign in terms of media is this group planning?
Well, I hope that that's enough money to be able to run some television spots late. You know, they've got to get these people all across the state to do a lot of things, and they are running this campaign at a bare minimum of expense. I think there are only 3 or 4, perhaps I hired one last week, employed people. But if there is any way to do it, I'm very hopeful that there will be some late campaigns on television. You understand, all of this happened as a result of Speaker Ramsey saying, let's have an election. We've never had one in 42 years that's partisan Republican Democrats. 2 times prior occasions had to do with death penalty versus no death.
What are you expecting on the other side? There's been talk, at least the Republican State Leadership Conference, which is an out-of-state group. Perhaps some other out-of-state groups are coming in, looking at what's happened in other states. There could be a lot of money spent in this election between now and August 6th.
No question about it, and that scares me to death, that to bring in groups from the outside, you know, I might have to use an old Civil War term and just call them carpetbaggers. What right does anybody from afar have to come in and tell us how we are going to govern ourselves and how our judiciary, which has been independent and the best in the Southeast the last 42 years, is to be governed? It's wrong.
But now you're complaining about this process being politicized, yet you're having to do the same thing. You're having to go out and raise money, spend money, do political things, turn this into a political race, which the Lieutenant Governor says he wants to have.
He turned it into one. We're responding.
Well, but you have to do what he says. You have to do what he says you say you shouldn't do, but you're having to do. You're having to kill it almost to save it, aren't you?
Absolutely. We are having to use the political process, Republicans versus Democrats, to the extent that Ramsey can make it that, but that's not where we are. We are with any right-thinking people who are interested in justices who call the balls and strikes just like the best umpires you could find, neither to the right, like the Lieutenant Governor wants them to call the balls and strikes, nor to the left, right down the middle. And when 93% of the lawyers, probably 2/3 of whom are Republicans anyway, say keep the justices, that tells you they have been wonderful umpires.
But in the final analysis, what's wrong with what the Lieutenant Governor said? The yes-no election allows people to campaign about that. I mean, by its very nature it does, and even the amendment that's on the ballot in November still allows that. So this process allows it. To say they shouldn't do politics really sort of says the system isn't supposed to work the way it can work.
Well, really, the way the system was designed was to have the safeguards going in with the appellate court nominating commission picking the 3 best people from its view, the governor selecting one, and then the retention commission, most of which is appointed by the legislature, to carefully look at the records of these people and make a recommendation to the people, which is a recommendation on a nonpartisan, bipartisan basis. My objection is to a partisan election, Republicans versus Democrats.
You're a lifelong Republican.
Yes,
Does it bother you that there's no statewide elected Republican, or not very many of the prominent Republicans even elected anywhere in the state, who are standing up with you on this, either on the Lieutenant Governor's side or they're trying to stay out of it?
Sure. I would love for our senators to be involved. Obviously, one can't be involved because he's running for election now, and he couldn't be involved in any race.
But the governor's not involved.
Well, the governor, what the governor said pretty clearly is he wished it was not happening. This doesn't do anything but confuse the issue for Prop 2, which of course is going to be a November vote, and is a huge thing. And as I understood what he said, he wished it were not taking place. Now that's about as strongly as you can say. I'm not going to get involved in politics.
Very quickly as we wrap up, Tennessee elections for the judiciary will never be the same after this. You can't put the genie back in the bottle.
Oh, I think we can. I think if, in fact, the people of Tennessee keep partisan politics out, and vote to retain these 3 justices, as the commission has recommended, as overwhelmingly the bar has said, then we will be able to keep politics out, particularly if Proposition 2 is passed in November, allowing the government to appoint.
Lew Conner, thank you for coming in, and we'll see what happens in October.
Thank you very much for having me.
Let's take a break. We'll come back in just a minute and talk to the other side in this controversy, people from the Tennessee Forum who believe these justices should be ousted. Back after this break.